Can we, when just
Recording in progress.
wanted to just, we can just go ahead and if Sunny comes, we can, is that okay? All right. I call to order this March 26th, 2025 meeting of the Public Safety Committee. Roll call, please. Here.
Lefka.
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims. I hear the door. Alderwoman Sims. Here. Alderman Lockmiller.
Here.
Alderwoman Harder. Here. All members are present.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the approval or amendment to the agenda. Has anybody had a chance to look at it that wants to change the agenda in any way? Hearing no changes, it will stand as submitted. The next item on our agenda is citizen comments. Anybody who wishes from either this room or online to address this committee on any issue of public safety will be given 3 minutes. Please identify yourself and your address.
There's no one online.
Thank you. I'll move on from citizen comments to the reports of the committee chair and alderman. As the chairman, I have no report. Alderwoman Sims?
No report.
Thank you. Alderman Lockmiller?
No report.
Thank you. Alderwoman Harder?
I have one thing to say. I haven't been on. Oh, sorry. This was the first time there was a severe storm or a severe threat since I've been on the board, and I was just incredibly impressed about the proactive way the police and the fire department were ready to go at any moment. So,
Well said. We move down to item number 5, the city administrator's report. Thank you. We'll move on to the department report, starting with the police department.
Good afternoon. We have two things on the new, for new business on the agenda, so I was going to cover the crime report and then go sit down and come back. There were two incidents in our crime report of interest that I think most of you heard about. We had a spate of cars that were broken into on the 13th on Pine Avenue. About a week later, we had a incident down on Van Markway in the apartments. We believe, based on what the detectives have discovered, that it's likely the same crew. The second event, they broke into several cars on the parking lot of the apartment complex, and then they carjacked two people that were sitting in a truck and assaulted the driver, stole the truck, and left the area. The detective's been working that case since, obviously, and they've made some progress on the case. The vehicle that they stole in that carjacking was used in a burglary, in a smash-and-grab style burglary in St. Louis, so the vehicle was recovered and processed by our detectives. Subsequent to the vehicle being recovered, our detectives have done several search warrants based on where they are in the case. So pending the outcome of the search warrant information, I think they're going to move forward. And shortly after the Pine incident where the cars were broken into, there was an arrest of a juvenile, 15-year-old. So that sprung some leads for our folks too. So it's an ongoing investigation, but they have several leads that they're working. With regard to, as you know, we've been trying to do a traffic detail over the last few months. So in 2025, we are up to, as a police department, just at 400 tickets and 397 warnings. Officer Brown has got, as you know, is detailed to this traffic assignment. Right now, London's over 118 tickets and 256 warnings, so there's quite a bit of activity and business out of this. Focusing a lot on the typical complaint activity that we get from you as alderpersons, and then also on our main thoroughfares. There's been, London's been running radar on Manchester and Brentwood and our side of Hanley Road. So those are the typical areas we've been hitting. Our flock report that I usually tell you about, 2025 flock hits are up to 27. Just to give you a little idea of the value of these cameras that we're using. The cars taken in the carjacking, including the vehicle that was stolen and the car they came in, was captured on those flock cameras on McKnight right before the highway. So it was a really good lead for our detectives to be able to capture that video. The Body-worn camera update, next week, the first week of April, we're scheduled for utility to come into St. Louis and begin the process of the training for our department for the new body-worn camera program. We anticipate that it's probably about a 30-day process, and then hopefully we'll get it integrated into CAD and be up and running. So it's going to take a little bit to get to, but we're excited about the opportunity to upgrade that system. Just a quick update on the electric vehicle that we're purchasing. We're still being told 30 days out on the car, but we did have the charger installed last week at our station. So we are ready for the receipt of the car. Anybody have any questions?
Questions from the committee? Steve?
Yes, sir.
Regarding the Flox cameras, Chief, are there any other areas that you might need additional cameras in the city?
We're up to 10 now. I think we're pretty good right now. I would say the answer to that at this point would be no. And another reason for that is that Maplewood and Richmond Heights and Clayton all have flock cameras also. And we're all able to see and hear each other's flock cameras. So while we have 10, we really have 30 or 40 in Central County area right here. So I think we're okay right now based on where they're located. Jason, Major Simpson did a good job picking out the locations. Surprisingly, the one on McKnight, sir, I'm sure you don't want to hear this, but it has been one of the more successful ones.
Yeah.
The bad guys kind of like that McKnight Highway 64 on-off ramp there.
And then there was an incident up at the Activate.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
What was the outcome of that, and are they doing anything to improve?
So it's kind of a work in progress. We had a fight that was amongst some people that were inside, and they had paid, and they were inside doing what they do at Activate. It spilled outside on the parking lot when a fight started, and then we had people that were showing up that had been called. They were mostly parents of these kids, and we had a pretty good brawl that was going on in the parking lot. So our officers responded along with Richmond Heights, Clayton, and a couple other departments, and they quelled it quickly. Luckily, there were no weapons involved. It was over pretty quick. But I've talked to the manager up at Activate, and we are working with them to try and assure that they have proper security for the future. So I'm not sure what that looks like yet, though. We're still talking to them.
So were these like teenagers who like laser tag gone awry? I mean, is that? I mean, yeah, I'm being cute a little bit, but it's all
Younger
all
teens,
funny
actually.
until someone pulls a knife.
Yeah,
but-
they're younger teens, actually, most of them,
and then so their parents arrived and joined in.
apparently.
Oh my God.
I have one question. So on the flock cameras, I know they have the readers that will identify and ping you when they come across a license plate.
Right.
In the instances where the license plates have been removed from the car, are the flock cameras, do they have a technology that will identify shape, size, and color of the car
do.
and help you with that?
They do,
Okay.
yes. And you can actually input that into the system to look for a specific kind of car if you want to do that.
Huh.
Gets a little overwhelming at times. We tried to do that about a year ago, and you'd be surprised how many gray Hyundais are running around the street with no plates on them.
Yeah. Or cars of a similar shape and size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One last note, I think probably most of you know Detective Tim Bone. He's announced he's retiring, so he's leaving April 18th. Tangela's posting a job for the police department on, I think, tomorrow, so we will be in search of another officer.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Chief?
Good evening.
Hey.
Have 5 topics in the monthly update. They're certainly not in chronological order or in order of importance. It's just how we remembered them for this month. Probably most important for us, a hiring update. So we have made conditional employment offers to 2 of our folks. The initial number 2 person that we offered the job to had rescinded his acceptance and went to a fire district. So then now we're down to number 3. The person that finished first has completed all of his pre-employment requirements. He will start the Fire Academy on April 14th. Candidate number 3 is currently in process getting scheduled for physicals. He will graduate from the Fire Academy next week. So we anticipate once he clears his pre-employment, he'll actually be working on shift probably by the end of April. The number 1 person that's going to be going through the academy probably won't come on shift until July. But we're excited about that. That'll bring us back up to a full boat. Won't have any vacancies or anything like that. Any questions on? Perfect, okay. Highlighting Alderwoman Harder's comments about the storm response. Yes, it was hot and hairy last Friday on the 14th of March. Our truck essentially spent half the afternoon and most of the evening in the north end of the county as part of an automatic aid strike team because they had structure fires that were started from down wires being driven by 70-mile-an-hour winds. So the preparedness that we have in place, we didn't miss any calls in our town because we backfilled with our own personnel. We ran 5 of our own calls, but Lieutenant Herman, who was riding the truck that night, got the honor of running 15 calls, separate calls for service all over North County. Specifically in Bellefonte, Neighbors, Wellston, Moline, Jennings, Spanish Lake, Riverview, and Florissant. So they put a lot of miles on the truck and got to see some things that usually don't happen around here in Brentwood. But that goes to planning and preparedness, so we didn't miss any calls here. Moving down to the fire training facility, the commission met yesterday to discuss the progress on the construction updates. They have bidding documents that are prepared, and those are ready to be sent out to the manufacturers for the actual bid process and specifications. Included in that is site preparation, utilities, and the actual physical construction of that tower. Will probably come to the Board of Aldermen, full board, through this body, probably by April to bring another update on that and then move that process forward. The fire truck that we're in process of purchasing, myself and 3 other members of the truck committee leave Sunday morning at 6 a.m. to drive to Appleton, Wisconsin for the pre-construction conference. That gives us the opportunity to see, I think, all 18 sets of engineered drawings and to go line by line for each component of the truck to make sure that it's what we requested, how it looks on the engineered drawing, and how it fits into functionality for the truck. We anticipate being up there 2.5 days. We should be back by Wednesday. And that's a normal process for any fire truck that's ever brought. They won't do anything until we complete the pre-construction conference and essentially authorize the engineered drawings by the purchaser. So it doesn't sound very exciting, but it is because you actually get to get inside and see how the truck's built, and then like wiring harnesses. They get down to detail on wiring harnesses and coloring of wires. Fascinating for some, not so much for me. And then finally, fire station updates. Much like another department in the city, our HVAC compressors on the Daikin systems, we've had 2 of those that had to be replaced, and they are original equipment from when the station was constructed in 2010. Just normal wear and tear, what we're told. Everything is functional, and we didn't have any downtime or were impacted by any of the bad weather, either extreme hot or extreme cold during the switch out of the compressors. So that's all I have for this month's update. I'll be more than happy to field any questions that you have.
Nope, thank you.
All right, thank you very much for your time.
You bet. Dan, can you give us a report on Public Works?
Since our last meeting, the Rosalie Swim Club intersection, if you recall, the flashing pedestrian warning sign, we were told to remove that. We removed that plus the post. They're all stored in the garage. And then the week after that, we put the next set of speed cushions in. So there may be 6 or 7 houses east of that intersection. And then the last thing for us to do is put in the advance warning sign. So the signs are in. The ticket's been called in. It's ready now. So either later this week or beginning of next week, we'll put those warning signs in on either side of the speed cushion. Switching gears to High School Drive, that alley north of Litzinger Road, we did talk about that at the last meeting. I took some measurements. I just need to write up a new Schedule 3A for no parking. So that'll prohibit from the alley X number of feet to the north. So I just have to put that together for the April board. 2627 High School, I know we talked about it at the last meeting, but I didn't have the data to you. I had it for me, so I included it with this report. So if you look at that speed cushion, it was installed north of Powell. We ran data north of Powell, or roughly that northeast corner. And then we also ran it directly across from 2627, which would be south of Powell. So you can see from the data, the speed cushionings are doing what they're supposed to do. You know, the after, right across from 2627, you've got 5% or so are doing 30 miles per hour or greater, which is a marked reduction from the 16 before the cushions were ever put in. So it looks like they're doing their job. We can always, you know, run another data report later, you know, just to see throughout the year if things change. But I'm pleased with what they've done so far. 2409 High School Drive, there were concerns in that block from south of Litzinger on High School that people were parking too close to the intersection, that people, I believe, were speeding, that the people that were dropping kids off at McGrath weren't, I guess, following the new procedure, which is to drop them off, enter through St. Clair, go through the parking lot, and come out of high school. We haven't seen anything to corroborate what was said. I know I did the data analysis for speeds, and I don't see anything. You know, I see what we normally report on, which, you know, you've got basically 900, maybe a little more than 900 vehicles per day. But of that 900, it's single digits, like 4% are violators, meaning 30 miles per hour or greater. So that I don't see anything wrong there. It's no different than any other street. I even ran like the volume by speed, which is a more detailed report, and you know, most everybody's doing close to the speed limit. The average speed is only 24.1 miles per hour and a posted 20. So I don't see speeds there. I know the drone was flown by the fire department in the area, and people are actually circulating around McGrath the way they're supposed to, so we're not seeing people blocking high school, you know, going both north and southbound while kids are being dropped off. You know, we'll look again. Like I said, I've driven through the intersection multiple times. I don't see anything that was reported. It doesn't mean it didn't happen. It's just that I don't see it. If the person did, it would be good if they took some sort of, you know, pictures, documentation, so there'd be concrete evidence. And then the only other thing I had that wasn't on the report was Precision Concrete cutting is out on Eulalie. I know it's more public works, but it is public safety. They're planing the sidewalk in case somebody asks. So basically from down where it intersects with Rosalie at Eulalie all the way here to Brentwood Boulevard in Eulalie, both sides are actually anywhere that there is a defect between the two elevations of slabs are cutting it out. The only slabs that they're not doing are ones that we're going to replace later this year, spring.
You have any
That's it.
questions, Steve?
Yeah, jumping back to the speed cushion at 2627 High School.
Yeah.
I see the data now before and after. So you're saying that the speeds of 30 or more of the total vehicles there, they've dropped to 5%?
Yeah, for the collector when it was placed to the south of Powell, and then we've also run the collector to the north, and you see it's reduced both. I think when you're looking at like directly south of Powell, people are coming around that curve by Carl's. They can't really go really fast through there unless you're in some sort of sports car. But then as you're going north, then you're straight, but then you encounter the speed cushion and then you're slowing down again. Or you're slowing down right before you hit the speed cushion.
So the rate of speed, the reduction would not qualify if we were looking to put a cushion there in the first place. A cushion wouldn't qualify based on the speed reduction that we have now after.
Yeah. And I think if you put a second one in, you're really not going to see much of a reduction. If you had them redundant, you know, on either side of Powell, it's like, well, what would it drop to? Is it going to drop to 4, you know? And at what point do you keep putting more of them in and not seeing enough of a change? I mean, each set's, I want to say like closer to 5,000 now. You know, without the labor, we do the labor, but just to buy it directly from the vendor, it's hitting about $5,000. So I'm like, well, I'd save that cushion somewhere else, you know.
Some other block.
Yeah.
And then the high school, 24, it wasn't, I think that what was brought to our attention was not the speed along there, was that what was occurring at St. Clair with the students being dropped off or picked up at that time, those time periods, has now shifted down to high school in Litzinger. And it's made it even worse because now we've shifted those drop-off and pickups onto a street that already had a lot of traffic prior. And it was my understanding with the school doing this renovation that these drop-offs were going to get queued up on their property site and not, if you're there at those times of drop-off or pickup, people are having their kids, tuck and roll out of the car and drop off in front of the school instead of going through the queuing because they don't want to wait in line. So this is causing problems. We had somebody already that can't get out of the alley. This other individual has a hard time backing out of their driveway because of drop-offs at that time. So it's a time period. It's not during the day that's really the problem. And I don't know if there's anything we can do signage-wise as far as school zones, or if we just need to talk to the school and have them relate that this is how you drop your kid off at McGrath. You go down Litzinger, you come down through the queuing driveway, and you drop them off on site instead of out in the street on High School and Litzinger. So I don't know, Bull, if that can be coordinated with the school board.
We can reach out to the superintendent.
And some type of plan that they refer to the parents on how to drop their children off for school. And that's gonna, and the other thing is that a lot of the teachers are not utilizing the parking lot. They're parking on the streets in front of people's homes. And that's the complaints I'm getting. So they've got plenty of parking. That's why they built this. And I think we just need to relay those concerns to the school board that they need to utilize their own site for drop-off, pickup, and parking.
I have a question about this. I was thinking about this myself. So along High School Drive, as it comes south and approaches Litzinger, that's the area where parents are just sort of bypassing the whole queuing up process and just dropping kids, right?
Dropping
That's the
kids off
spot.
there. They're also, as you cross over onto Litzinger, so it'd be south, they're dropping them off there and then having the crossing guard allow the kids to cross.
Cross Litzinger.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So you've got the regular added traffic of people going to work that's always been there at that intersection. Now you throw on top of it kids trying to get to school, being dropped off-site instead of being dropped off on-site.
So what about, I don't even know if this exists, but I was thinking about this in this context. There's angled parking north of Litzinger on the west side of High School still, even with the new construction. But is there such a thing as an MUTC certified signage that says something to the effect of you can't drop kids, you can't drop off passengers. This is a no drop off zone. In other words, sign some area where it says.
There is no stopping, standing, or idling. That's in our ordinances.
And I didn't know if that would be something that might be somewhat effective in just deterring people from, as you say, gliding up to the intersection and saying, okay, everybody's out, and ready
Yeah.
to go, yeah. Yeah, 2 minutes to school, here you go.
And I know from teachers that work there that they get stuck in that line, and so they're trying to park and get in the classroom before the kids get in there too, so.
What time do they report, do you know? Is it-
8 o'clock?
Yeah, I've gone through there, like, we started 7, so I've come there before 7 and just a little after 7. I don't see anything, but I'm probably too early.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, because I didn't see anybody blocking the intersection. It's like, okay, I see cars lined up, but it's not like they were blocking Litzinger, which is more the concern that I would have, because it's only a 2-lane road.
I don't know. There needs to be information conveyed to the school board of our concerns with that area down there and the amount of traffic, just the usual traffic now on top of people not, and I don't know if, a lot of it was during the construction. I know they weren't utilizing that, but it's open now. And I think people have just picked up habits that it's quicker to drop your child off
Right.
in front of the school than to go and queue up and,
Wait 40 minutes.
yeah. But that was the whole idea of that project, because as you know, and it was in your ward, St. Clair that was mayhem when well, now that's all shifted down to my ward. right there at Litzinger and High School.
They just changed intersections. I mean,
Yeah,
it's basically-
and it's even worse because of the amount of traffic that's there, the volume. So I think something needs to be done before a kid gets hit by a car.
We'll also invite the principal to the.
I'd be happy to attend too, so,
we do that just through staff. Is that
yeah.
enough to just give, does that give you enough direction?
That's
Okay.
enough.
All right,
thank you.
all right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
The consent agenda consists of our meeting minutes from the last meeting, which was a month ago, February 26th. Anybody had a chance to review and wants to offer any redactions or additions? Hearing none, the meeting minutes, if I can get a motion to approve the consent agenda, will stand as submitted.
So moved.
Second,
Been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka? Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
yes.
Alderwoman Harder?
Yes.
Motion carries by a vote of 4-0.
Thank you, Kelly. We have no old business, new business. Item A are the police seizure funds.
As all of you know, about a little over a year ago, the Brentwood Police Foundation started gathering funds to try and get a dog for our police department and for our city. They did a fantastic job, raised the money, dog, training, car, the equipment, the whole 9 yards. At this point, that funding for the foundation has been exhausted, and at this point, we don't see anything coming in the near future. So we are in a position where we have to fund food and a couple other items for Red. And we've asked the city administrator, Bola, if we could use our asset forfeiture account to pay for those items. And they are budgeted in the 2025 budget for things that apply for that. So it's easy for us to do. And we were just asking for her approval, and she asked us to bring it here tonight to talk to you about it.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So I know there's a manual that goes along with the asset forfeiture funds, and it explains in pretty good detail. It's about a 29, 30-page report in which it details what you can spend the money on and the process whereby you
Yes,
can
sir.
spend that money. Is supporting a canine officer, is that one of the permissible?
It is. So the training, the vehicle, these items that we're requesting to pay for are, yes, they are in the approved items for purchase.
And the way the money is paid out, as I understand it, is a request is made to the organization that oversees this. I'm assuming none of this has changed with all the changes in federal government, but whoever oversees it, you would make a request for dollars for whatever the thing is, and then they would either say yes or no to it.
So the process typically is if you have a big dollar, excuse me, if you have a big ticket item, we would typically call, there's a person who's our conduit to the feds for asset forfeiture, and we will explain to them what we're going to purchase. We did this with the electric vehicle, for example.
Right.
But on these day-to-day items, as long as it's within that guideline that you described, we don't seek approval for it, but there is an auditing process to this. And they're looking for cities and police departments that, how they spend their money, and in particular, looking for supplanting issues on those audits. But these day-to-day, especially these small ticket items like this, we don't get, it's not needed for approval for them.
And the money that's raised is raised from asset forfeitures within DEA?
Yeah, so before I was brought on as chief here, we had a police officer from Brentwood that was assigned to DEA. That money's just about dried up, but we had funding that was coming in each year I was here. And it was from years ago. That's how long these asset forfeiture funds take to go through the system, through the courts.
Okay.
So they would, it dribbles in year by year, but we've been told by DEA that our funding is pretty much exhausted. Don't expect any more.
And the current balance of the account is 300,000 plus?
A little over that, yes, sir.
I didn't have any other questions. Steve?
Yeah, also in that budget in 2029, you got the replacement of the EV vehicle that we don't have yet. But that's like 4 years later. How long do don't those EVs have a longer life than?
Yeah, there was, and if it was me that misunderstood, and then I believe it was Alderwoman Parker Tice that asked about that. And I think to clarify, we asked to purchase that electric vehicle as an extra vehicle for the police department to perform functions. That's really the definition of supplanting, is that we can't buy that car and then the city says that's a car that we would normally purchase for you. It's an appropriate expense through asset forfeiture as long as it's an add-on to what we're doing. If it's supplementing what we have to do, not supplanting it, and that's what that car is doing. So
Well,
I say that because
I don't mean to interrupt you, Chief.
No, go ahead.
That's kind of not the point of my question is, doesn't an EV have a longer life than an ICE vehicle? So that 4 years later, we're already replacing it.
But my long answer to you, I could sum up with this. We have no intention of rebuying that car. So the thought that we're putting it into the city's program to repurchase, that's not applicable here. In 2029, yes, to your point, hopefully, we'll see what kind of duration we can get out of an electric police vehicle. One of the reasons that we opted to go with the electric side was really to see how it's going to perform, how it holds up. So we really don't know. But the point is, that in terms of budgeting and an asset forfeiture account, we're not going to replace that car with asset forfeiture funding. This is a one-time request to assist us to complete the things that we're doing that we need that car for. And it's on top of what the city has purchased for the PD. But 5 years from now, 10 years from now, if it lasts that long, we are not, there's no intention to replace that particular car like you would a normal police car in this city. So it's budgeting it or putting it into some version of a budget for replacement doesn't make sense because we have no intention of buying another one. There is an advantage to buying that car. We can evaluate as a city as we buy cars in our normal budget process whether that electric vehicle is a vehicle that we should consider. So there's that value.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Did you want, I mean, we're public safety. I don't know how this is a financial issue coming to public safety.
This is gonna have to go to Ways and Means.
Sure.
Because I'm hearing things I didn't hear during the budget process. And I think it hasn't fully, I haven't fully absorbed it to determine what my response to that would be, because the direction and the discussion at Ways and Means differs considerably from what the chief
different,
just
right.
said.
Well, okay.
So, I think it's just information sharing for you all tonight,
Very good.
and it'll be taken up at Ways and Means in the future.
Thank you very much. Are you going to speak to the Blue Shield program as well? Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Alderman Lockmiller, regarding the request you made of the PD to consider that Blue Shield program that the new governor put in place. They did come out with the list, and you looked at this on your board docs stuff. You saw that there is a list of things that has to be submitted. We are in a position to be able to submit these things, but it starts with a resolution from the Board of Aldermen that they will commit to the items on the list. So our attorney Jim has reviewed this, and so it's in your board docs for consideration to pass to the board to do this resolution so that we can go forward with applying to be the Blue Shield city. That's what this is.
Do you know any other departments doing this at this time?
Kind of a complicated answer. There was a rush to do it initially, but some have backed off for other reasons.
Well, that was going to be my next question, because, I mean, you show that there's no cost to doing this, but it looks like it takes a lot of manpower to put.
Honestly, it's not going to take that long to prepare this.
And then where it says participate in regional anti-crime task force, I mean, is that something where, kind of like what we did with the DEA, where you're down a man because you have to participate in some other?
So they don't define that. And if you, to discuss that one in particular, they don't define what a task force means. In my consideration, that would be, for example, nighttime car crime details that we're doing with our neighboring cities. So as you look at those criteria, what my intention was is to write to the grant, and then once, if the resolution's passed, write to the grant. But these areas, all of these things, we are doing already in different ways.
That was my observation, that
Right.
let's get a certification for something that
And
we're
of
already
course,
doing.
once we prepare it, prior to submission, we'll pass it to Bola, and she can do it however that it wants to be disseminated, if you guys want to look at it. But all of these things we are doing already, we just need to explain in that, after that resolution's passed.
Get a motion to adopt this resolution and forward it to the full board for adoption.
Second.
Seconded, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Alderman Plufka? Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller? Alderwoman Harder?
Yes.
Motion carries by a vote of 4-0.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, sir.
Yep. Proposal for an ambulance replacement?
Hello again.
Hi.
At your positions, you have a memo requesting consideration for replacement of our reserve 2012 ambulance. That ambulance currently has 86,000 road miles on it. Based off of replacement parameters set up through industry standards, it'll meet 14 years of life before its scheduled replacement in 27. And then probably the most important aspect of it is the idle hours. Since it is a diesel, idle hours do affect wear and tear on the engine. It currently has a little under 8,900 idle hours. In the document, we have a multiplier of 40 miles per hour per engine hour. That is a conservative estimate. Most diesel industry manufacturers use 50 for that multiplier, but if we go conservative on 40, that adds 350,000 miles to that engine. And ambulances and fire trucks are notorious for having high engine idle hour times. Knowing that, and because the ambulance has had 2 critical failure points after its 5-year service life, one of them being a complete engine replacement and a complete replacement of the fuel system, it is essentially at end of its useful life. We do have an ambulance budgeted in capital for replacement in 2027. The reason we're coming to you now is because of the inordinately long build time for ambulances. In fact, most emergency services equipment now. I remember when we came to you asking for the fire truck for a 2-year build, that my jaw dropped. I mean, I've been doing this for 45 years and used to be able to get a fire truck in 12 months. Now, if you can get one in 2 years, you consider yourself fortunate. That conglomerate has now transferred down into the ambulance manufacturing industry, 24 to 30 months for an ambulance build. So it's part of a process that we have no control over, so we have to be able to operate within the parameters of it. We have had a very good conversation and a very good process with our ambulance committee that was chaired by Lieutenant Herman. They essentially put out a request for bid. We had manufacturers come in, and then they went through detailed presentations with each of these vendors. And we have essentially chosen Foster Coach as the vendor of choice if given permission. The quoted price that they gave us is $380,478, and that includes a very generous $25,000 trade-in for that 2012 ambulance. I don't think we would get $25,000 if we put it on Gov Deals. So they're giving us $25,000. Sir?
I was just going to ask our city administrator a question. From the purposes of public safety for this committee, you're looking for us to vet it from a public safety standpoint, I'm assuming.
Correct.
It's going to spend time at Ways and Means.
Yes, it will.
So I would just say, if I don't mean to interrupt you, but if anybody on the committee has any questions from a public safety standpoint in terms of this ambulance's ability, this new one's ability to serve the needs of the community, anytime you want to jump in, ask me, or just say something, I'll recognize you. Please continue.
Okay, sure. And that's a valid question. Part of the presentation was if given the blessing, we would bring this to Ways and Means and have a resolution developed for eventual approval at the full board. But one of the other things I wanted to point out with some economy of scale with this is because we've received some grant funding for the LifePak monitors and some other radio items, the budgeted amount will be reduced by 50,000. So we're at 470 for this replacement unit. Using Sourcewell, we don't pay anything until we get the vehicle.
Other than it just being new, are there any features of this ambulance that are improved upon from the ambulance we currently have in service?
It's a much safer box and frame. The current ambulance we have doesn't have airbags in the back. So if in most ambulance accidents, it's usually considered a rollover because of the different center of gravity. So the new one will have airbags in the patient compartment, much better for patient restraints. The technology, there's more computers in it. It's a much better box that's on the back. And that was probably one of the main issues that the build committee actually addressed, because the frame and chassis, it's the engine and the chassis. I mean, it takes you from point A to point B. Where the real work is done is in the back in the patient compartment with able to be modifying equipment, storage, things of that nature. So yeah, it will allow us to perform our job more efficiently and safely.
Any questions? So do you need a recommendation from this committee to say that we approve or disapprove of the purchase of, or the projected purchase of a new ambulance?
That would be good.
Okay. Can I get a motion to that effect?
Yes, so moved, rather.
Thank you.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman Harder?
Yes.
Motion carries by a vote of 4-0.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, thank you for your time and consideration.
You bet. Dan, do you have this next one? The road safety, is this you?
Well, kind of.
Okay.
I'm going to
Do you
start
wanna-
in.
Yeah, go ahead.
This was brought to Alderman Gold, and then he forwarded it on to me.
Oh, that's right.
And it's a concern that a citizen has right there at Litzinger and Kentland. Just to describe it, as you come off Brentwood Boulevard and head east on Litzinger, you come to a Y-type intersection. To the right, you go Kentland. To the left, you continue on Litzinger. And the issue is where those stops are, if anybody parks along the curve of that Y, the neck, you have no visibility of the stops whatsoever. So what the citizen is suggesting, if we could do and once again, a no parking here to corner, I guess, Dan, you're the expert here, to at least give that visual, to be able to see a straight visual between those two stops. Because the resident that lives on that corner right there tends to park several vehicles along that curve, and you can't see the oncoming car when it's stopped there on either side.
Yeah, I've driven it a couple times. It's a three-way stop. I could see the cars. Looking to your right, there are parked cars that are in front of 8742 Litzinger. That's the very corner lot. So they're at the corner of Litzinger and Kentland. You know, they've got a garage in back. The best I could tell is those, if you look at Google Earth from 2022, it's the same pickup truck and Jeep Wrangler that are parked in front. So I know it's got to be that resident that's right there at the corner. And they don't have a front driveway coming from Litzinger. They have parking in the rear on the Kentland side. So I think they just parked there for the sake of it's closer to their front door, and there is a sidewalk across the front of their lawn. If you force them to park somewhere else, they're just going to park in front of someone else's house. It'll clear that intersection a little bit, but it'll make their lives more difficult because they'll have to walk further to get to their front door.
Well, they do have a driveway. It's just they've got a massive amount of vehicles that they,
Yeah, I looked at, like, at most you could fit 2 vehicles in there. At times on Google Earth, there was a pop-up camper. At other times, it looked like I don't know, like a low-slung car, like maybe a Corvette or something.
without any signage, they're permitted to do that.
Correct. I did look at the current code. So under 3A, there is no prohibition on Kentland. Where the prohibitions start would be 2428 South Brentwood, which was the Hunan Walk, If you're on the east side of their property at their driveway that's to the east of their property, it's for about 150 feet in length from that point to Kentland. But there is none in that stretch of Litzinger going from Kentland where the person's indicating that they're parking. So
Is there signage where the prohibition exists currently?
there is, just according to the code, there's none where they're parking, but there isn't in the code, so they're fine to park there for now. If you did put something in, which you could, then, like I said, they just won't be able to park some of their vehicles there. I guess they'll just move it to the east, along Litzinger, which might create a choke point between cars parked on either side of the street. I don't know.
You make a recommendation from what you've seen as to whether or not the suggestion from the resident is a good one, that's something that
I
we
just
ought to
didn't see it
consider?
being an issue because you're coming to a three-way stop. When you, 20 miles an hour, come to a stop, count 1, 2. If somebody else is coming, you should have seen them. Now you can start to proceed and turn right or left. The problem I see in the whole neighborhood is there's no sidewalk. So if somebody's walking, they're probably walking in the street or riding a bike in the street. But that home was built in 1940. Almost every single home in there is 1940 or 41. So for 85 years, there's been no sidewalk. There's been kids walking to McGrath or Mark Twain, probably Mark Twain, but I could argue either way. It's like, maybe put something in, but you might want to talk to the people that live there since they've used it for years. Now they won't, but since we put in a sign and post last time, I don't want to pick at a wound, but when I put up a sign on my property, I was told not to put a sign on my property, so.
Well, I mean, if they park around that corner and somebody's at that stop on Litzinger, you can't see the person at the stop, nor can you progress any further because you've got a ring of cars around there.
Right. I just didn't see an issue when I pulled up. Again, I came both directions. I came east on Litzinger, west on Litzinger, like from Mary, and then coming up Kentland. It's the Kentland as you're
Well,
coming
I
up
understand what you're
Kentland.
saying, but people don't bring these things to us because you don't see a problem.
Right.
They see it.
So
Right,
if-
it's a perception thing, I think, on their.
If I may interject, I think there was another street in Ward 3 in the early days where the residents, the neighbors, are the ones that had the issue with someone on their street and how they would park and blocking access. So we took the meeting to them on the street and had the neighbors actually talk to that homeowner. And so we did very little other than schedule the meeting, and they were able to figure out where they needed to park. So I say that because that's one option instead of Dan coming up with a solution. And you said, well, they need to talk to each other, maybe they haven't. And so we can start there.
That'd be perfect. Great idea.
Yeah, what's the first step? How do we get something like that started?
We will have Michelle Boyer help us and schedule a neighborhood meeting.
Yeah.
And
Happy to be there.
then take it to them, invite you, and I think we had the Oldham at the time join us for the, actually, we had the police chief too, so Joe, you're invited.
I'd be willing to go. I mean, if you're.
Jason, you too.
Yeah.
Sounds like a plan.
We'll-
Okay, do
we'll
you
set
need-
that in
Do
motion.
you need it further direction, or is that good? Okay.
That's good.
All right. Thank you, and thank you, Dan, for your help with that. Item E is to establish a procedure to determine reasonable accommodations in city ordinances, rules, and policies pursuant to the Federal Fair Housing Act and/or the ADA. Hi.
We have found the need to establish procedures to evaluate certain requests that would not be a violation of either the zoning or need to go to the Planning and Zoning Commission or Board of Adjustment. They are asking essentially for a variance from the city's code. In some cases, it could be for emotional support animals that would violate the city's animal regulations, and therefore, we're looking to establish such procedures. The draft ordinance includes that a resident wishing to have the city consider such would need to submit an application to the city administrator, and it would proceed to this committee for review. Since it is largely under the public health and safety that would have to be considered as part of that. If it were an instance in which the police or the fire felt that there could be a larger public safety, that would be a reason for which you would deny the request. But then it would then get forwarded on to the Board of Aldermen for approval if they wish to appeal your decision.
So, do I understand this? I don't think I do. I don't understand. Is this a routing ordinance, like a?
Yes, it's
saying
establishing
if-
procedures for review of such requests.
Okay, so if your request meets one of the criteria established out in the first part of that section, then there are instructions as to where you would head next? Do I have that right? Paula? Do you think? I don't know.
Yeah, essentially, under the federal fair housing, we have to make a determination of reasonable accommodation and rules and policy.
Right.
Which such accommodations may be necessary to afford a person equal opportunity to use or enjoy a dwelling. If it doesn't fall under the zoning code or requires a variance at the Board of Adjustment, then the procedure that we're looking to establish to review these requests would be here at the Public Safety Committee.
Sorry.
Because it would be a matter of, the reasonable accommodation would fall under a matter of public safety.
And then,
And
I
then
mean, the
like,
goal is that it gets to the Board of Aldermen at some point?
correct. They can either accept your decision, or you can approve it, or they can appeal to the Board of Aldermen at large.
But during that process, it will come to this body,
It would be,
public safety.
yeah,
Assuming we enact this.
Yes.
correct.
Is this required by either the ADA or is this procedure required by the ADA or the Fair Housing Act? Is that what?
It is required that we establish a procedure to review such requests.
I couldn't say whether it's the ADA that requires it. We're borrowing from a situation that has happened in other cities, so our zoning council has explained that this is the process in which this matter could be adjudicated. Because we have a pending issue coming forward.
I mean, does anybody on the committee have questions or?
Well, so I guess we're establishing this procedure, and if at this level we reject it, the request, then what happens?
They could appeal to the Board of Aldermen.
No, I mean, I think he means
Oh.
this piece of
Oh,
legislation.
this piece of legislation?
If we don't forward it up to the full board.
Well, no.
That would be a,
I'm sorry, I
No,
misunderstood.
I mean, if we do put it in place and it's there, their first, I'm trying to figure out how this would come into play where somebody would step up, be there at the podium and request a public safety, what?
To
so
allow,
the example I could give to you was in another city. A woman was keeping monkeys in a residential setting, which as wild animals are not legally allowed. The city had to establish the procedure in order to hear her case that she considered them her emotional support animals. So they had to, as a matter of public safety, whether the adjacent residents felt that it was a matter of public safety and a danger should the animals get out, that would be a reason that they would seek your approval.
They would come here, there'd be like a public hearing, so the public would have to be notified.
Correct.
And then,
As part of the ordinance, that they have to submit an application and public has to be notified 10 days prior to this meeting.
Okay.
then if it fails here, the appeal process is that they would go to the full board.
Correct.
Okay.
Would that apply to like seeing eye dogs or something, all of that?
Correct. Well,
Not-
dogs
not
are
really,
allowed up to
yeah.
3.
Right.
But if someone says, well, I have one seeing eye dog, that's my
Support dog,
support dog, but I have these other 4,
okay.
They're all
that
emotional
would be a
support.
violation
Okay.
because a maximum number of dogs is 3.
So they get cited, they make whatever complaint they want to make, they make it here first,
Correct.
make their case according to this ordinance, make some determination, and if And if they're dissatisfied with that determination, they can appeal that to the full board.
Correct.
Okay. I understand.
So is it that they would be cited first before, how are they?
There would
to-
have to be a complaint and a code violation regarding whatever situation it is. And then they can submit an application to have it be considered before the city.
Any other questions? Yeah.
I think this is kind of fascinating, actually. So what type of proof do they have that that animal, I mean, are these things certified by a doctor? How did,
So it is reviewed on a case-by-case basis, but they would have to provide evidence from a doctor that it was necessary or some other evidence that they felt that it was to make their case.
can't just say this pet makes me feel good, so
The monkeys. I do know someone that has a service dog, and the dog is trained.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not just, picking up a puppy and saying
Right.
it's, it's my service dog, so.
Right. Okay. All right, so what we're seeking here is approval of this ordinance and forwarding it on to the full board.
Correct.
Can I get a motion to approve this ordinance and to submit it onto the full Board of Aldermen for consideration?
You have questions?
So, okay, so if we don't act on this, I mean, is it,
Why would you not act on it, if I may ask?
well, I don't know. I'm just asking a question here at this point. Is this, I mean, currently, without this procedure in place, somebody was cited, where would they, I mean,
Yeah, we kind of need the procedure in place. Right now, we don't have a procedure to review these requests.
okay? I'm assuming there's like a fine involved if they get cited.
Right now, it's either we send them a violation, they either have to submit, there hasn't been a fine or anything until there's actual decision. It proceeds to court. But if under the federal fair housing, we have to have a procedure in place to review reasonable accommodation.
That necessarily has to be an administrative procedure.
Correct.
So all we're doing is what, runs parallel to a lawsuit that might be filed? Or runs as something prior to?
No, I don't think there's a lawsuit filed until there's been a formal adjudication
Right.
of the request. So typically, we would be responding to a complaint. That's usually how we find out, correct?
But if the person that investigates the complaint on behalf of the city finds that there are circumstances that warrant a citation, could that citation be eviction?
Before we could go to that length, there has to be an adjudication, a hearing.
On whether or not the reasonable accommodation has been met under the Federal Fair Housing Act
Okay,
and the Americans with Disability Act.
okay. Yeah,
so if we don't have this in place and somebody does go this route, they could be a federal, I don't know the term for it because I'm not an attorney, but they could sue us they could sue the city under the fair housing.
Failing.
I'm not an attorney, but yes, that's my understanding.
that'd be my fear, but I don't know if that's founded or not. I mean, I really don't. I
Well, the council that's advising the city has gone through this, right?
Yeah.
In another community, and this is the process that they undertook to resolve the matter. It's typically not a pet, it's usually what is defined as a wild animal.
Okay, so in that example that you're talking about, did that community get sued by the person who had the complaint filed against them?
Did they
For
get, I
failing
don't
to
know,
have
Whitney.
procedures in place?
No,
Or
they
for
were.
failing to live up to the fair?
Right, they were establishing, as part of the complaint that we received that was received on that case,
Right,
they had to establish this procedure, and then they went to directly, because they don't have the subcommittees, they went directly to the city council that it was reviewed.
So let me ask it this way. Without this procedure in place, is Brentwood vulnerable to a lawsuit that alleges that we somehow did not live up to our obligations under the Federal Fair Housing Act or the ADA by failing to have this procedure in place?
Yes.
Yes.
That's a real risk?
Yes.
Okay. Considering the fact that we're simply recommending this to the full board for consideration, and all four of us are gonna be involved in that process,
I'll make the motion.
thank you very much. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll
There
second
you go.
it.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the motion to send this to the full board for consideration? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Excuse me, Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
I will recuse myself from this vote.
Okay. Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman Harder? Yes. Motion carries by a vote of 3-0 and 1 recusal.
Thank you. And thank you. So the last item is the Arts in Motion School of Dance at 1265 Hanley Industrial Drive.
So Elisa Jones received a conditional use permit for her Arts in Motion Children's Dance and Music School on 2494 South Brentwood Boulevard and has been within the city since 2016. She is looking for larger space and being able to expand some of her services that could include yoga classes and during non-peak hours. The location that she is seeking is 1300 Strassner Drive, which is a tenant space within the building at 1265 Hanley Industrial Court, which is zoned light industrial. In light industrial district, recreational uses such as this is considered a permitted use. However, under the business license section of the code, that dance schools and dance halls are required to be investigated at the Public Safety Committee for recommendation to the Board of Aldermen. Due to specific criteria regarding lighting of all this and safety of the space and the operation.
So, okay. So the reason it's here is to consider what public safety issues are we talking about? You said lighting
Yeah.
and
Well, so what the code says on section 605-670, Article 4, dance halls and dance schools, under the business and occupational business license requires that dance halls and dance schools are to be referred to the Public Safety Committee or to the Board of Aldermen for investigation. It shall investigate the hall or the premise where it is proposed to conduct such public dance or public dance hall, having particular regard to its provisions for safeguarding the patrons and the public, and shall also investigate the character and fitness of the person, club, association, organization, or society, and a report of such investigation shall be made to the city collector. The application and report shall thereupon be referred to the Board of Aldermen, which shall direct the issuance of such license or deny the same as a matter of public interest.
has any of that investigation been done?
So, yes, so as part of under section 605-620, it discusses in the memo attached to the thing, attached to your agenda, building maintenance operation requirement states that no public hall shall be licensed or operated within accordance with the requirements pertaining to health, building, fire regulations, and public morals. And it goes on to list specific things. The applicant will be renovating the entire space. So as part of the review, like I reviewed, there's sufficient parking on site, but the review of this interior space cannot be completed until she's completed the construction of the tenant space. So the condition of the approval would be that she would have to meet with all of the building code requirements and with the section under business licenses.
You're having us consider, see, I don't know, that's what I don't understand. You're having us consider whether or not she meets those requirements before she's ever done anything to meet those requirements.
Well, we can't issue a building permit unless we know that the business is an allowed use. So in order to issue the building permits, we have to get your approval on the use. It's like any conditional use permit.
And so what we're saying is this is a dance school. I think the language in the code is old. A dance hall, a dance school, they're two separate things. And so this is a dance school for children. And so the building inspectors have gone and toured the site. There could be an expectation that when items are placed on the agenda, you would do the same. But in her report, she says, we've toured the site, and other than a few items that will be corrected when they do their renovation, this would be permissible. Is that what you're saying, Whitney?
So
There's
do
a-
they, so at the end of all of the renovations, is she required to come back to the full
No.
board?
No, the approval would be similar to any conditional use permit, where she would have to meet the standards and receive an occupancy permit per the building and fire code.
But,
So we'd be approving as long as she can do what she needs to do to get the occupancy.
Correct. So like, we
Yeah,
can't issue a business license and we can't issue building permits until we know that the use is approved by the board.
does this strike anybody as backwards?
Is there a
besides me?
historical, like, backstory? I mean,
there-
it's seedy
there
history
might
of dance
be.
halls that obviously would have nothing to do with the applicant.
Right.
Like,
It's an old code.
Well, I mean, yeah, especially the part about the owner and their fitness to conduct business.
Well,
and all
but
that.
if you really think about it, in other communities not here,
Yeah.
where you've read in the news about clubs and issues associated with, go ahead.
Like
'Cause you've
Kickoff
got it.
Mall.
Okay, there you go. Do you, s-
Wait,
do
I
you
believe
understand?
the
now?
intent
That's why.
was to ensure that the business would not become something that. the
Something
city
other
didn't want.
than what,
So
yeah.
so the
Right,
ordinance
but,
approving the.
but my point, Whitney, and is just that how you're asking us to fulfill that is to in advance tell you, this is okay as long as you do everything on here to our satisfaction, which we won't be able to give until after we see it done, right?
Correct, but that's
But-
how any conditional use permit is.
it's no different from Activate and the issue
Okay.
that materialized over the weekend.
I mean, I
it's just the use.
And
but
then we
the-
come back to
the
clean it
building
up.
it's the
Okay.
electrician, the plumbing.
Yeah,
That,
so-
if that's square, the
Thank you.
use is okay. That's,
Yeah,
and for some reason,
that's-
it's in the code, so we have to do it. I mean, I'm not trying to speak for you,
Right.
but that's how I understand it.
okay.
Correct. It's like if someone were to go to the planning and zoning, so like, if you remember, back in 2022, she came to the Board of Aldermen. It had to be reviewed because in the district and where she currently is located, it's listed as a conditional use, which required review and approval at the Planning and Zoning Commission and Board of Aldermen. The odd thing with this situation is in the light industrial, it would be considered a permitted use, but under the business license section of the code, it required this review. So it's essentially like, like a conditional use permit.
Okay. You're asking this board to recommend approval from a public safety perspective of what she plans to do
Right.
as is.
A dance
together
school for
in this.
children.
Okay. Okay. Does
I'll
somebody
make
wanna
that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman Harder? Motion carries by a vote of 4-0.
Thank you for putting up with all of that. Our education. All right. Thank you. We have citizen comments as a final item on our agenda. Is there anybody in the room or online who wishes to make a comment with regard to any issue in Brentwood concerning public safety? If so, you'll be given up to 3 minutes. Please identify yourself and your address.
There is no one online.
Thank you. Seeing no other items on the agenda,